All right, so our company is called X Event Dynamics. The X event stands for, it's a shorthand for extreme events. And an extreme event is the kind of event that happens to disturb a system of everyday life, a communication system, a business enterprise, a government agency, or whatever. It might be a crash of the internet. It might be some major climatic problem. It might be a major technological advance. But these are things that can turn the life of an organization upside down. Those are X events. They're rare, they're surprising, and in general, they have very high impact, in usually negative impact. Loss of money, loss of lives, loss of emotional security, and so on. Because they can happen in your individual life too. We are all worrying about, at some time, some kind of problem that might happen in the future. If it does happen, it can turn your life upside down, and you would like to know, what should I be doing today so that I can build in a little bit of protection if such an event happens, so it doesn't blow me away. And this is the very essence of insurance. It's why we buy insurance, is to protect ourselves or our family in the case of some kind of an event, a heart attack or an auto accident or some other thing that may or may not happen in some point in the future, but if it does, you have some protection. Well, it's very difficult to buy insurance against a asteroid impact, or against a crash of the internet, or against a major pandemic, illnesses, or something of that kind. So you have to take action yourself today to anticipate that kind of an event, and to think, how should I manage my organization, or how should I manage my life today, so that if and when that event happens, I'm ready. It doesn't destroy me. And in fact, maybe even you are a beneficiary of the event, and certainly not a victim. And that's what our company, X Event Dynamics, is designed to do. We have a spectrum of tools that, depending upon what the kinds of problems that our customer is really interested in, what they're worried about, we can tailor our tools to fit their specific situation and give them help in, number one, understanding the events they're worrying about. Number two, anticipating the event, not predicting exactly, but knowing what are the early warning signals which suggest this event might be happening soon. And finally, how to manage their organization today so that if and when this event happens, they're ready. Because it doesn't do any good to wait until the event happens and then start making your plan. So we want to help. And most of these customers, they know what they're worried about. So our business is not to give them more things to worry about than they already have on their plate. Our business is to ask them, what is it you're worried about, and how can we use our tools to help? Because almost for certain, what they're currently doing will not be the same kind of tools that we have. Our tools are pretty new and very different from the usual ways of risk analysis. And so that's the essence of X Event Dynamics, is to give people an alternative way of looking at their problems, and a way that, if our tools give the same analysis as what they have, so much the better, because it gives them more confidence in their own analyses. If we give a different perspective than what they have, then they can ask themselves, well, why is it different? What is it we're missing? And what is it these other guys are missing? So I think it's a win-win situation in either case. You get a new vision, perspective on these potentially, let's say, organization or life-threatening kinds of problems. Well, first of all, there are lots of different ways that they can be caused. Usually they're caused because there are several different systems in interaction, and most people, they might have control over one of the systems, but they don't have control over the other ones. Like take the communication network, the transportation network, the food supply networks, and so on. They're all individual systems. They interact, and sometimes the way that they interact can give results that are completely counterintuitive. You can't understand that by looking at any individual piece. The behavior is in the interactions. And this is what we call a complex system. It's where the emergent behavior, it comes, for example, take a simple example. Take a bottle of oxygen and a bottle of hydrogen, each taken by itself as a gas, and if you put a fire to them, they'll explode. But if you mix them together, all of a sudden you get a liquid, water, and if you put a match to it, nothing happens. The match goes out. It's so the completely different properties, because those are now these new properties have emerged of being a liquid and being fire preventers rather than fire accelerators. So this happens all the time in human systems. This is the typical way that an X event can occur, just by misunderstanding. It could also come from miscommunication. Somebody says 5 and you hear 50, and you turn the dial up too high. Or it can be malevolent. A terrorist deliberately causes such an event, like these cyber attacks and so on, the ransomware and things. These are not by accident. Or it could be just plain stupidity. So there are many possibilities, and there are plenty of examples of each one. So, but that's how they happen.
If it's caused by a human, it can be fixed by a human.
Not really. I think that all of those things that I just said, miscommunication, misunderstanding, stupidity, malevolence, so they're always going to be with us. Mm-hmm. And so I give up on the idea of actually preventing the events. I think, in fact, in many cases, the events are in a longer-term perspective, very helpful, because, well, in the short term, it may have a lot of damage, and there may be a lot of people who are not prepared, who get blown away. But what also gets blown away is all sorts of structures in the society that have outlived their usefulness. They're a product of some other era, and they should have disappeared long ago, but they don't disappear because the power structures in, well, at least Western society, mostly the politicians and the banks, or the finance people, the one thing in the world they do not want is change. Because they're the main beneficiaries of the system the way it is right now, and maybe to get reelected, they might do a little bit of cosmetic polishing around the edges, but it's not any kind of meaningful change. The only way you get real change that's visible is the old structures have to be blown away. And this is what these extreme events do. And it's not too pleasant in the short term, especially for those who get blown away. Like the dinosaurs 65 million years ago, it was bad news, that asteroid, for the dinosaurs, but it was good news for us, because we wouldn't be here having this conversation if that had not happened. And so what you want to have is, you want to have these X events because they're necessary for human progress, but you don't want them to destroy the whole system. You know, the first rule of survival is to survive. And then you can worry about how can I take the skill set that I have and look at the new environment, the new niches that have been opened up for new services, new products, new ways of thinking, and where can I fit into that scenario? And most of the big companies in the USA nowadays, they started their lives doing something very different than the way they became big companies. They had to make this transition from what they thought they were in business for to what it turned out they were really in business for. And you can say this about Apple or Microsoft, Kentucky Fried Chicken, whatever, they all have this, let's say, unfolding process. They had to reinvent themselves. So I think that what we can hope for is not preventing these extreme events, but to try and control them. Try and see how can we have the effect of the extreme event without, do the experiment, if you like, without killing the experimenter. And a good example is we burn down parts of forest deliberately so that the rest of the forest has a better chance of growing and being healthy. We do the same thing with agriculture, with raising animals, and a lot of the different parts of society are aimed at basically destroying part of the system so the rest has a much better chance to survive into the future and not totally burn you up or blow you away. So that's the real skill, is how to control these events. I should say in advance that these tools are not sort of one-size-fits-all tools. A customer comes in and we say, oh, you need this tool, and we sell them that tool and they go away. That would be like writing a book. I can write a book once and sell it 1,000,000 times, the same book. But our tools are, some of them are aimed at helping the customer understand the problems that they face. Other ones are aimed more at helping them get some insight into how to manage their system today. And some other ones are aimed at giving them some ways of identifying early warning signals when one of these events is coming up. You know, the yellow light is on. You better start paying attention. But in each case, we have to first of all talk to the customer and say, well, what are your problems? What are the kinds of questions that you're worried about? We're not in business to try and create new problems for them and say, oh, you should be worrying about this. They know their business better than we do, and find out what are the problems that they're worried about. And those problems will be very different if you're a big tobacco company as opposed to if you're a intelligence agency in the government, as opposed to if you're a high net worth individual. They're each worried about different things. We have to take their set of problems and figure how we're going to tailor our tools specifically for them. The basic idea, the basic way of the tool will stay the same, but the interfaces and so on have to be changed. And so in that sense, our company, XED, it's a boutique consulting firm. Like you go to a special shoemaker or a special dressmaker, and they make something that's just for you and not for somebody else. Well, first of all, I would give you some broad categories. Some types of events might be financial, meltdown of the financial system. Other types might be economic, which is different from financial. It might be problems of unemployment or interest rates or other things. Some might be geopolitical. You worry about regime changes in some country or political assassination or things of that kind. Or some of them might be social unrest, like what we're seeing in Europe now, this massive wave of immigration from North Africa and the Middle East. This is a social problem, a social X event. Some of them might be some combination of human and nature, like a major pandemic, some kind of a new strain of influenza, like the one Spanish flu from 100 years ago. Or it might be something in the domain of infrastructure failures, like a crash of the internet, some communication problems, and so on. So there are many, and some are combinations, as I say, nature and humans. Global warming is a good example of that, but by no means the only one. So there's a whole spectrum of different categories of these extreme events. I would say our company is not a specialist in any one of them. We're very familiar with all of them. And that's why I can give you this list, because every one of them I've written about in one form or another in one of my books or articles. Helping customers. You know, we have to find out once they tell us, well, this is what we're worried about, we have to have a lot of interaction with them to narrow down what what are the modes by which that event might happen. And because that's what you need to know in order to get some ideas about early warning signals that the customer should be looking for. Because a company like a big tobacco company, they're going to have a different set of early warning signals than a military agency. So we have to treat them differently. So this is part of the charm for us, is because we always learn something. And then we can use that the next time.